We're under federal occupation. We're under federal occupation.
Is that a threat?
It sounds like a threat to me, but we'll see what a grand jury
That is
wants
not
to do.
a threat.
That's your opinion. I've got a different opinion. We'll see what a grand jury.
Now, those words are opinion.
Hey guys, I'm Mike. Today, we're breaking down a recent segment from Abby Phillip's CNN panel where Scott Jennings and Pete Seat weighed in on the latest political headlines. It didn't take long for the conversation to veer into some pretty predictable MAGA talking points. So I want to pull out a few key moments and share my perspective on what's actually happening here. As always, make sure to like, subscribe, and drop a comment below. I really want to hear your take on this one. Let's jump into the footage together.
An escalation in the chaos involving ICE on American streets. The Justice Department is opening a criminal investigation into Minnesota's governor, Tim Walz, and the mayor of Minneapolis over possible obstruction of federal law enforcement. Now, a grand jury has issued subpoenas for both of them. Walz calls it dangerous, authoritarian, and a weaponization of the justice system. He says that the only investigation should be into the agent who shot Renee Good. Now, Jacob Fry, the mayor, says that it's just an intimidation stunt. Also breaking tonight, a federal judge has ordered ICE to stop some of its tactics on the ground in Minneapolis. She wrote that ICE agents cannot retaliate, arrest, or detain people who are engaging in peaceful, unobstructive protests. They can't use pepper spray to disperse crowds in those peaceful protests, and they also can't stop or detain drivers in vehicles where there's no reasonable suspicion that they are forcibly obstructing or interfering with operations. Now, she also made it clear that following ICE at an appropriate distance is not considered reasonable suspicion. So a lot going on the ground in Minneapolis, and you're seeing, Stacey Schneider, an acceleration of the Trump administration using or attempting to use the levers of the Justice Department to what seems to be punish speech of the governor and the mayor.
Yes, it looks like lawfare against politicians now who are running Minnesota. And there's a federal statute that the government will likely invoke here, which says that if two or more people conspire to impede law enforcement efforts using force, threat, or coercion, that is a crime. Now, we've all seen the statements made by Fry and by Walsh publicly about what's going on in their state and cities, and none of it is evidence of threat or coercion toward ICE. Basically, Fry said that crass statement to ICE, get the F out of here. That's not a threat. That's not an illegal statement or indicia of a criminal statement. Without more, if he said, we're going to hurt you, ICE, we're going to go after you, I'm going to shoot you, that's a threat. But just saying, get out of my backyard is no threat. And Governor Walsh saying people should protest peacefully, loudly, go ahead, protest, take pictures of what ICE is doing, videotape them, act as witnesses, but do it peacefully. None of that. That's all appropriate speech. It's First Amendment protected speech. And for the federal government to go after these two officials for saying words like that is abominable.
Yeah, I mean, in a way, the two events that are happening tonight, the DOJ's actions and this judge's ruling, which seems to reinforce that people do have a right to record. They can actually be following ICE agents, recording them as long as they're not breaking any traffic laws, they're following at a safe distance. They're basically saying that is okay. And so for DOJ to then try to, it seems, criminalize that, how are they going to substantiate charges against these two men?
Well, I mean, that's a great speech. We don't know exactly what they're being investigated for. We have very few details about this based on what I've heard. There are conversations potentially going on with a grand jury in Minneapolis. And look, based on their public statements, it's pretty clear that, and based on the statements of officials at DOJ, it's pretty clear there is concern that these two guys have used their positions and their public statements to try to obstruct the execution of federal laws. Now, whether that rises to a crime, I don't know.
Can you give me an example?
Yeah, where's that clarity?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think they've both made numerous public statements that have made it perfectly clear that they do not want federal laws to be enforced in Minnesota, and that they flatly said they don't want ICE there enforcing federal immigration laws. They
That's
both
not what
said that. They have literally both said, ICE, leave Minnesota. In fact, Tim Walz said we're on the third day of Gettysburg at one point.
He did not say that either. Okay, sorry, but he didn't say that. Jacob Fry has said, we want ICE to get out of our city. We don't don't oppose ICE enforcing immigration law. We don't want them in the city in the numbers that they are in the city. That's what he's
listen,
talking about.
I know they have great lawyers here at the table.
Look, I'm asking about real, really, if they're going to pursue criminal charges.
That's not what's been reported.
Okay, so what is the subpoena for?
That's not what's been reported. What's been reported is that there's a preliminary investigation. No criminal charges have been brought against them.
Yeah, it's an investigation in order to bring charges.
To find out.
What truly grinds my gears about Scott Jennings being a constant fixture on Abby Phillip's show is his complete refusal to deal in reality. He never brings facts to the table. Everything he says is filtered through a lens of pure opinion. You can have actual legal experts sitting right next to him, people who live and breathe the law, and Scott will just dismiss them by saying, well, that's just your opinion and I have mine. This is the core of the MAGA movement. It's entirely devoid of substance. They love to claim they are the facts over feelings crowd. But in reality, they operate strictly on feelings over facts. Ultimately, Jennings, this administration, and the entire cabinet have shown they don't actually value the foundations of this country. They pretend to be the ultimate free speech warriors, yet they stand firmly against dissent. In Scott's mind, any form of pushback or criticism of the regime is treated as something unlawful. He essentially wants the public to lie down and quietly accept whatever they dish out. MAGA doesn't care about laws, rules, or established norms. Night after night on CNN, Scott Jennings pushes the narrative that any attempt to question authority like opposing ICE's actions is a criminal obstruction. It's a dangerous rejection of the right to protest and the very principles this country was built on.
If charges are warranted.
Listen, if they bring criminal charges, my question is, what for? What for? And then secondly, is this risking this administration doubling down on something that is deeply unpopular in this country?
What should be deeply unpopular are the agitators who are trying to harass and intimidate ICE. On this very network during the 4 p.m. Eastern hour, a reporter was on the ground in Minneapolis, and he was explaining what he has seen with his own eyes, that during the day, yes, peaceful protesters exercising their First Amendment right. But what happens when the sun goes down? A new group of people, younger, come out, and in his words, are agitators. They are standing outside a federal facility where ICE agents are going to start their work or finish their work for the day, and these agitators are kicking the cars, hitting the cars, trying to cause problems. And we're not focused on that. Yes, there have been issues with peaceful protesters. I would ask, though, the judge, and perhaps, Stacey, you can explain this, what exactly defines peaceful? Like, where's the line? And where's the line for harassment and intimidation when it comes to following ICE around? Because at some point, a line is crossed.
So I don't really see the line being crossed here unless someone took a physical hand to an ICE agent or damaged property. Well, okay, so you know what?
What about a physical car?
That's a misdemeanor offense for potential
running
damage
over someone
to
is a misdemeanor. Hitting someone with a car.
Run over.
That's not what we're talking about, Scott. We're not talking about someone getting
What about parking your car perpendicular on the road? What about parking your car perpendicular on a one-way street?
Yeah, that's not harassment. Sorry, that's not how the law
I'm asking you, is that peaceful protesting to block traffic with your car on a one-way street and then hit an ICE agent?
That's being stopped by a law enforcement officer making a decision whether to proceed or flee.
All right, go ahead.
I hope you're not recommending people do that, because that's how people get hurt.
I'm glad you're hoping that.
I think this whole thing is horrible for what we're seeing for our democracy, for what we've seen with federal agents, and a lot of people saying, I can't believe this is happening in our country. For all the thing that it's horrible for, I'm torn with something, because me and Tiff were talking in the back. I don't want to put our stories out there, but people are literally dying. Folks are out there literally hiding in closets. But as a Democratic consultant, I'm also like, man, they cannot get out of their own way, because people who are swing voters, folks who aren't MAGA, folks who aren't Bernie Sanders, but regular folks sitting on their couch at home, know that this is crazy to be happening in America. You can give a little blame to either side, do whatever, both sides of things all you want, but we all know this shit ain't right.
Can I just ask, just to clarify, what is the part that people think is crazy?
78% of folks that we have polled, and this station has polled, had seen that video. And unlike Scott, they don't think that he was hit by a car, and they think that that woman was unlawfully, whether she was or not, they think she was unlawfully killed.
Understood. All right.
They believe their eyes and their ears. But I just also want to correct something. A complete misrepresentation of what the reporter you were referencing, Shimon, was on ground in Minneapolis. And I saw the stand-up he did in the 4 p.m. Eastern hour. He absolutely did not say what you suggested he did. He was saying what he had been told. He's been on the ground bearing witness.
No, he said, I have seen
this. He didn't. The audience can look at it.
Agitators.
He didn't. He said
that
he said what he's been told.
But
it's not about what I'd like, but I think of the liars at the table. I'm probably not in that category. And I'm also not a cult member where I regurgitate every talking point from the GOP.
We'll show you the transcript in the commercial break.
Great. But the point is, he was saying what he had been told on ground in Minneapolis. But even that aside, Pete, I mean, we're still dealing with an agency that has been told that they can kill people with immunity. The president of the United States has essentially given them permission to act unhinged. Last year was the deadliest year for people in custody of ICE agents. 32 people have died. So for all of these purported Christians and all the people who followed Mr. President 2 Corinthians into the voting booth, I just really want to know, what Jesus are you serving that's looking at this right now that's saying that's okay? It is not. It is hypocrisy for you to sit here and try to, for anyone, not just you, for anyone to sit here and try to justify that. What's more concerning, look, with all due respect to the law, I'm concerned that the judiciary will hold the line for what's happening in the country. Right now, ICE has contracts for up to $25 million worth of contracts where they will have an array of spy tools and utensils, things that are like facial recognition, social media tracking, phone hacking, and the federal government has said they will use these tools for people they claim are domestic terrorists, just as they claim with Renee Nicole Good. How terrifying is that? So if you're a peaceful protester, if you're an agitating protester, they can start using this technology on its own people.
And you know what's crazy? The administration is calling domestic terrorists, applying that name to protesters. Or you can call them agitators, screamers, yellers, people voicing their opinion under the First Amendment that they're not happy with the actions of the government. And the ironic thing is, if they have this facial technology and any one of us is subject to that facial technology by being on a public street, why not use that in your enforcement of the immigration laws and rules to find illegal immigrants rather than using it against the American people who are engaging in their First Amendment right to protest?
I think they may very well be doing both, but
they're not signaling that they're doing both.
But I do wonder. I mean, on the facial recognition piece and the surveillance piece, I feel like there was a time when conservatives would have been completely up in arms about that. They would have been just like they were up in arms about, the Patriot Act and that era of surveillance that really actually was not supposed to have ever been applied to Americans. Why is it that it's okay now for an agency that is supposed to be charged with dealing with undocumented immigrants or immigration in general can now use that technology on Americans and there's no check and balance on it?
What I find so interesting about it is it's been utilized 100,000 times, according to the Wall Street Journal story today. And yet this is really the first time we're hearing about it. There was a story in a much smaller outlet back in June.
I mean, people have been talking about it, but it hasn't risen
to. The reason why, Abby, is because it's working.
What do you mean?
It's because we don't cover things unless they go haywire.
I don't necessarily agree with that.
It's doing its job.
I don't agree with that.
It's ensuring that we identify people and make sure that they are who they say they are, and ensure that they aren't U.S. citizens.
I don't think that's the reason.
And it's
that
also
it hasn't
because we
been
have
talked
facial
about.
recognition
I think
everywhere we go.
Hold on a second. I don't think that's the reason. Okay, I think the reason that we had not been talking about it is because a lot of these contracts are relatively new, and it takes a while for us to see how they're being utilized. But the question remains: are you comfortable with a federal agency with the widespread use of technologies like facial recognition technologies, surveillance technologies being used against Americans? Are you comfortable with that?
I have no reason to be against it at this point. And as I was trying to say, we are used to this. I used facial recognition technology this morning flying here from Indiana to get into the pre-check line.
It's a good
Disneyland took my picture last Saturday to get into the park.
The disclaimer at the airport when you do go to the airport is that you can actually decline to have your face utilized.
Right.
And if you can do that as an American citizen. So that's that. But look, I do want to play. Todd Blanche was in I think he was in Minneapolis today. Let me play what he said about what I guess they might be looking at when it comes to the governor and the mayor. Listen.
When the governor or the mayor threaten our officers, when the mayor suggests that he's encouraging citizens to call 911 when they see ICE officers, that is very close to a federal crime.
So, first of all, I should say what he just said is not actually what Mayor Fry said. So I know this is a running theme, but there's just been a lot of taking things completely out of their appropriate context. He was actually saying what Mayor Fry was saying was that Minneapolis residents are calling 911 when they encounter ICE, and that the Minneapolis Police Department cannot respond to all those calls because they don't have the manpower. But you were saying.
Right. Well, for Todd Blanche, the Deputy Attorney General of the United States, to say that Tim Walsh and Mayor Fry are threatening he has a duty not to make statements like that. That is not true. He knows that's not true. We've all seen the video. It's public knowledge what they have said. They have not made any threats under the law. Their speech was not even close to being threatening. And to have the Deputy Attorney General make a statement like that is horrible. Todd Blanche also, a few days ago, tweeted that he had his eyes on Walsh and Fry, and he was looking for them, and he was calling them domestic terrorists. This is not American.
This is not
that is not the way he should be.
This is not a threat. It's a promise, he says.
It's a promise,
but,
right.
But to Stacey's point, where are the alleged threats from the mayor and the governor toward federal officials? Do they exist?
Yeah, I think they've made statements that you could reasonably consider to be threats toward ICE agents, and they're gonna take these statements to a grand jury. Abby, they've made plenty of comments that indicate these people we're under federal occupation. We're under federal occupation.
Is that a threat?
It sounds like a threat to me, but we'll see what a grand jury wants to do.
That is not a threat.
That's your opinion. I've got a different opinion. Let's see what a grand jury.
Now, those words are opinion words. Those
words
are not threats. They are purely
He
opinion.
might be wrong. It might be inappropriate, but it's not.
I mean, if you want to move to Minneapolis and take up for these guys, go ahead. I'm just telling you what the point of view of the federal government might be.
I'm just trying to understand what the point of view is. I'm still listening. What else do you got?
They have made numerous statements, Abby, over and over and over again, that they don't think ICE should be in Minneapolis, that they don't think federal immigration laws should be enforced, that they think law enforcement has been put in danger by incitement. That's their view, and they're going to take that to a grand jury. So I don't know what's going to happen in the room, but we'll see.
None of those are threats. Look, here, listen.
You're welcome to just say things out loud and speak them into the air and hope and pray that that's what happens.
Hey,
maybe it will, but I don't know.
When it's obvious, it's obvious.
Just listen. This is not something. You don't work for Todd Blanche or Donald Trump.
I don't even know.
As far as I know.
You don't work for Tim Walz, as far as I know.
You don't have to defend things, even when you can't figure out what the defense is. Because to me,
I'm not defending
if you're going to open an investigation
I'm just explaining what they think.
But you can't
a criminal
substantiate your
investigation,
point,
and you
Scott.
can't even point to me. If we're talking about words, you ought to be able to just point on plain paper, what are the threats, okay? And if you can't do it, then you can't do it. That's the end of the story.
You're right.
All right.
This story shouldn't even exist. You're right. Let's do something else.
Well, Scott.
Watching Scott Jennings stare into the camera, you almost expect sitcom music to start playing. It's that performative. Once again, he falls back on the "that's just your opinion" defense to dodge reality. We watched as Stacey Schneider, an actual attorney, pointed out that local leaders expressing their opposition to ICE isn't a legal threat, it's protected speech. But in Scott's world, dissent is treated like a danger. If you don't like the administration's policies, he frames it as a threat. This is a classic tactic, framing criticism as something inherently unlawful. As Tiffany Cross mentioned, this movement seems completely immune to hypocrisy. You can't win a debate by pointing out their double standards, because the standards change depending on who is in power. Scott is a master of this. He's essentially acting as a spokesperson for the administration, spreading a specific narrative on a national platform. And with rumors that he might take over for Caroline Leavitt during her maternity leave, his megaphone for this kind of misinformation is only going to get louder. Pete Seat tries the same thing, claiming there's all this violence against ICE, yet we never see the actual footage. What we do see, however, is video after video of American citizens being treated aggressively during enforcement actions. If there was real, widespread violence against ICE, it would be on a 24/7 loop on every news cycle. Instead, they rely on people like Scott to invent a sense of danger. Even when Chuck Rocha points out that 78% of the public opposes these actions, Scott stays on the wrong side of the data. I honestly don't know how Abby Phillip stays so patient dealing with these talking points every night. She has to be one of the most composed people on television. Now, I want to hear from you. Where do you land on this? Are you buying into the arguments pushed by Scott Jennings and Pete Seat? Or are you on the side of what I see as the voice of reason with Abby Phillip, Stacey Schneider, and Tiffany Cross? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Make sure to give this video a like, subscribe for more daily breakdowns, and I'll see you in the next one.